Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, Ewan from What Culture, and today I'm joined by my esteemed colleagues James Hunt
Hello.
and Simon Gallagher.
Hi.
And we're here to talk about the Avengers 4 trailer, which unless you've been living in some sort of farmery, genocidal, self-imposed exile, you probably will have come across in the last week. And there's some interesting things. We had the initial reaction go up on the Friday, which was basically just us screaming into the lens. But now we're here to kind of talk about the more specific beats of the trailer itself. And the first thing I'm going to ask you guys is, going off of what we've seen in Avengers 4 so far, you know, all the set leaks, all the speculation that we've had, how much did the trailer kind of change what you think is going to happen? Do we have a blueprint of the film, or are we still completely in the dark almost?
I don't think it changed any expectations because, and I think they've done it quite cleverly, the things that were leaked, it makes me think that they possibly leaked it in the first place, because we heard about Ronin pretty much straight away.
Yeah.
The time travel-y stuff and the quantum realm being important obviously sets up the end of that trailer. We know that Tony Stark's stranded and it's going to be emotional. And that's pretty much all that the trailer says. It says there's a big plan, and if it doesn't work, then we're screwed.
Yeah.
We knew all of that. It's just an emotional mood board more than anything.
Yeah, I agree. The trailer's not giving too much away, so all those expectations and theories that we have are still very much in play. They could not be true. This trailer doesn't confirm either way.
Yeah. So we'll go straight into the earliest bit. We're kind of going to go from the chronological order of the trailer itself. And the trailer itself does obviously open up with Tony Stark floating around in space. He's not having a good time, we probably say. You know, he's low on food, low on oxygen. It's looking as though he's recording almost his last will and testament, and obviously it's directed to Pepper. Now, how do we think he's going to make it back from this situation? Because obviously, when they're stranded on Titan with the Benatar, it's just him and Nebula, which we'll get to soon. But how do we think he's making it back from home? Is he going to get rescued potentially by Pepper, or is this how we're going to see Captain Marvel get introduced, do you think?
Yeah, I think him talking to Pepper and kind of like being ready to die is very much setting up her to come and rescue him.
It sets up a little bit of a get off the plane. Did she get off the plane? I got off the plane.
Yeah.
Are you going to rescue me, Pepper? I'm here.
Yeah, and then we've heard there's been a lot of rumors about Pepper's role in this film, so Tony's message there does tie into that very strongly.
Yeah.
But then there's Captain Marvel,
Who is in space.
Yes.
And so it would make sense. But I think Captain Marvel is probably the one. You would think if Pepper's going to, then she would have to be responding to a distress call in the Iron Man suit.
Yes.
And they very obviously in Infinity War said the signal's gone, so they've made that impossible. Maybe she'll get around that some way, but I just don't see it. I think they need Captain Marvel to be like, I'm here to save the day. The first thing she can do in that, assuming she doesn't save Ant-Man from the quantum realm, is like appear at the last minute and save both Nebula and Tony Stark and kick things off.
Because we have seen some speculation that people, obviously there are certain images that Gwyneth Paltrow potentially shouldn't have tweeted out and shown everyone, but some people have speculated that potentially she could, quote unquote, rescue Tony, which again, call back to her armor that
I don't think that she won't be rescued in the film. I just don't think that it's going to be from there. I think it's too much. It's like, people are saying, oh, she says rescue in the trailer. That means he says rescue, so that means he's saying rescue. But that's so obvious.
I absolutely agree.
It's so on the nose.
And like you point out the signal thing as well. To me, this is almost like Tony. He knows that no one else is on the other end of the line. Yeah. This is just a case. If you find my cold corpse in space, here is what I said before I died. There you go.
There's only one person who made the rescue suit.
Yes.
And if he's give up on the idea of her rescuing him, then she's not going to do it.
Yeah. But as for Tony more generally, how do we see this film really? Because we've come to terms now that this is going to be the transition of the old guard of the MCU. You know, we're going to go see the likes of RDJ and Chris Evans and that kind of step out of the spotlight. Do we think this positions Tony for a death, or is he going to get that happy ending that has also kind of been rumored between him and Pepper? Because judging by this, there is a sense of finality to the whole arc that he has here. So I don't know, what do you guys think? Is he going to live, die?
I think he's going to die.
Yeah.
Not like in that bit. Obviously, he's going to make it back to Earth. You know, he's going to fight Thanos again, whatever. He's going to make it to the end of the film, and that's when he's going to die, because that's where Tony's whole arc has been leading to, I think. You go back to, like...
I disagree.
Ooh, conflict.
I think if you go back to, like, the Avengers and Cap telling him he's not the guy to lay down on the wire, I think that kind of builds up for a really fitting sacrifice at the end of this movie.
I'll tell you for why.
Come on, man.
So that arc is set up really obviously, but it's too obvious for a start.
Yeah, I hate those obvious arcs.
And also, I know, yeah, it's not like they always do the expected thing. The key thing in the trailer that suggested to me is the appearance of Peggy Carter. So, Cap says to Iron Man early on, "You're not the guy to lay on the wire." But Cap also says, "We don't trade lives." So one of those two things has to come off, and it fits more that Cap is the one who kills himself. I don't think both of them die. It would be too much for them to kill their two big brands in the MCU. And I think that, look, Cap is haunted by the fact that he didn't get a life with the woman that he loved and to have kids and stuff like that. If he was able to give his person, his best friend, let's say, I know they hate each other some of the time, but they are best friends. If he could give him the thing that he couldn't have himself, then it would make more sense for him to sacrifice himself for Tony, not for the world or anything like that, which is a really grand gesture, but it's much more personal for him to do that, considering Bucky killed Tony's parents as well. So it's, for me, I did think that he was going to die for ages. Now I don't. I think that he gets a happy ending, and it's thanks to Cap. And Cap sacrificing himself in order to give Iron Man a life is the only way that Iron Man retires.
Yes.
There's no way back for him from that. Any other way, he would be like, I'm still going to be Iron Man. But from the, like, have to promise to Cap that he wouldn't. It has to go like that.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think whereas Tony Stark, there is a way out for him at the end of the day. You know, he is, at first and foremost, a genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist. You know, the superhero life was something that was never going to be a certain thing. From the very get-go, Steve Rogers always was going to be involved in the Second World War. He was always going to have a heroic mindset, and he has no reason to stop being Captain America. And if he is to leave the franchise, the only way I see him potentially leaving is with a death as well. I think it would be really fitting if they did it that way, because, you know, obviously they have an on-again, off-again friendship. But if there was some way for Cap to give Tony the life that he could never lead himself, and potentially you could see them drawing in the whole Last Dance imagery with Peggy Carter as well, I think that would be the perfect legacy to leave the character on. But we'll move ahead a little bit again, because who else is on the Benatar but Nebula? And obviously if you read the Infinity Gauntlet comic, you'll know that Nebula is the one who kind of, well, she takes down Thanos, but then it all goes a little bit pear-shaped. She goes a bit mad with power, and then it's up to the Avengers and Thanos himself to actually take her down. Do we see Nebula getting revenge for the death of Gamora, or is the future a little bit more open-ended? What do we think?
I think it's a bit more open-ended. I can't see them fully doing the Gauntlet kind of arc with Nebula, because they haven't built her up quite as much, as not as important. You know, even the fact that she's on the ship with Tony Stark. Tony Stark is what matters on that ship, not Nebula. And then those two obviously aren't getting along very well. That's going really great. So yeah, I can't see that quite. I think she'll be important, as all the survivors will be. You know, they survived for a reason, but not quite to that extent.
No.
I agree. I don't think that it's going to be her that does it. It looks fairly obvious that she would be the one because of everything that he did to her. She is literally a personification of all of his evil.
Yes.
Everything that he could do to people, he did do to her. But I think she's not an important enough character. I think, to be honest, Hawkeye jumps above her in terms of the vengeance thing. If something has happened to her, if what has happened to him is what we think it is. And then everybody else has a reason. It's like Who Shot Mr. Burns? Everybody has a reason to kill Mr. Burns.
Yes.
And her one is like Homer's. Can't remember her name, basically.
Yeah.
I literally watched Who Shot Mr. Burns the other day. That's why it's in my head. I think I don't know whether Nebula and Tony won't get on, because Karen Gillan said quite a while ago that we're going to see new relationships in this film, and she said new dynamics. I think they're going to be like an odd couple.
Yeah.
I don't see her doing all that much. And which is a shame because narratively she has a big reason to be there.
Yeah.
And the only thing I would have thought is that she would be the one to go and rescue Gamora if she is rescuable. But then I don't see how that's possible either at the minute. I don't know. This has not been a good moment for me.
We know that Zoe Saldana has been involved in this film in one way or another, whether or not that is some sort of dream sequence where we see the Soul Stone again. It's all very interesting, and I think I agree. I'm a little bit disappointed that Nebula probably isn't destined to have as big an arc as she did in the comics here, because she's a really interesting character, and like you said, the whole stuff with Thanos channeling all of his malice into this one person, it would be a perfect way to kind of thematically come around to that. But maybe that's a potential failing of the Guardians films, and that they hadn't devoted the focus of those films is obviously on Star-Lord himself and not on potentially, arguably, the more compelling dynamic between Gamora and Nebula and Thanos, which is a shame in and of itself, but we'll move ahead, because Steve and Natasha have a plan. What the plan is for, to bring back the Avengers, or to deal with Thanos, or to deal with a whole new threat, we don't really know at this point and time. What do you guys think is the plan? Is it going to be a rescue attempt, or because we look at the shot of Banner looking over kind of Scott Lang and Shuri and Peter Parker, and it doesn't say they're dead, it says they're missing. Which implies to me that they certainly haven't been giving up on hope for whatever amount of time has passed between the events of Infinity War and Endgame. Do you think this is a rescue effort, or is this something else altogether?
I think this comes before Scott Lang appears, so I think it's the plan, and I think it fails. I think in order to set up more dramatic tension, they're going to, in the first act, have a plan that fails. I think it's going to involve Black Widow trying to get Hawkeye involved and him saying no, and then the second plan, when Scott Lang comes in, they then go back to him and he comes in. It's let's be honest, they aren't the best people to come up with a plan in the Avengers. I mean, they've got Bruce Banner, but he's a little bit broken at the minute, They need Tony Stark. They need Scott Lang's expertise in terms of the quantum realm. They probably need Eric Selvig as well, and he is... who knows where he is.
Off being naked in some English heritage site, probably.
Yeah. Their plan probably would not be the most elegant of plans. So I think that one will fail. And it's probably, let's go and punch Thanos in the face.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Yeah. It's interesting because I like that idea of then potentially the film picking up immediately after Infinity War, and then the time jump that we've heard so much about takes place like just afterwards.
Yeah.
Because not only does that imply that shows, almost the futility of their exercise, bringing back half the universe, it really hammers home the devastation that all this has wrought. And you're totally right, the Cap, out of all the Avengers, is the most emotional. His plan in Civil War is literally just, let's go find the bad guy and expose him. There's not, a lot of nuance to his scheming or whatever. Which it's very interesting because he's also wearing the Winter Soldier suit in that sequence, and we don't know whether that's a thematic callback for the Russos, because obviously they got their first entrance into the MCU with Winter Soldier. It's all very interesting, and the ambiguity of the plan in question, I like how they're keeping it vague. They don't spell out what necessarily it is, what they're doing.
The way I see wearing that costume is, he's not Nomad anymore. I know he didn't get called Nomad, but let's just say that he was.
They ditched the cape. No cape. He had a cape in the comics.
Yeah.
It was really
and
bad.
The mask as well.
The story's good. Cape, not so much.
They had him. That was him not being Cap. The opposite end of the scale is him being the Avengers Cap, where he's wearing all this jingoistic sort of America.
The Star-Spangled Man with a plan.
Yes. And clearly that's not appropriate for this sort of period, because there's all this sadness. And so his Winter Soldier outfit is like his winter outfit. He's matching the mood. Even though he's gone into quite a lot of effort to make his hair look spectacular.
Oh, it's great hair.
It is great.
No one's
So
denying the
fun.
hair.
But I do miss the beard.
Yeah.
I know, yeah.
It's a bit sad.
You would have thought that he wouldn't shave his beard until the end, when it was like, I'm getting ready to do some stuff.
Like getting back in the game, training montage, shave a
Yeah,
beard,
exactly.
put on the old suit.
But yeah, that's something we can also touch on as well, is the fact that Nat is kind of taking a focal point. We have that line where she's dwelling on the decimation that Thanos has wrought. He said that he's wiped out 50% of the universe's living creatures and stuff. And one thing that I'm very interested in is how they touch on all this, because an event of that scale is sure to have its impacts. And when we cut to the Avengers compound, it does seem as though it's just those three, Cap, Black Widow, and Bruce. So, yeah, as for her going down to Japan to track Hawkeye, that in itself raises a whole lot, because Hawkeye, him becoming Ronin is really interesting to me, because in the comics it was actually quite there was a bit of a backlash to it when he first came in. It's like, why have you turned bow and arrow guy into sword and stabby guy?
Hawkeye was a lot cooler in the comics before he changed into Ronin. The problem with the MCU is that Hawkeye was not cool.
This is the issue, and that's very sad, because I think there is no character in the MCU has had his potential wasted more so than Hawkeye. If you look at stuff like the Hurt Locker, I feel as though Renner's performance that he gives in that is very in touch with the Hawkeye of the comics, and potentially making him Ronin would give the potential for that performance to shine through yet again.
There was one. He's had one great moment, and it was at the end of Civil War when he stands up to. Is it Tony Stark goes to see him and he goes a bit weird?
Yeah,
it's great.
Yeah,
and then but the rest of it's just like
But one interesting thing when we see Hawkeye in the trailer is we have the narration from Cap, and he says we lost friends. That shows Nebula kind of touching. It might be Star-Lord's uniform.
I think it's Star-Lord's uniform.
But then he says we lost family, and we cut to Hawkeye, and the implication there, obviously, is that his lovely little wife and children,
baby,
are dead.
Yeah.
And that is really, really dark if they're actually going there. And this could just be a little case of misdirection. It could just be the case that he's seen all this death and he's decided to, go out of retirement again. But he looks pissed off.
Yes, he's not a happy bunny.
No.
I don't think, even though the snap would appeal to his heroic instinct that he would go back to the Avengers if he was going to do that. For him to become Ronin, he has to have lost his entire family, because if he lost his wife and one of his children, fair play, but he'd have to look after his other kids.
Yeah.
He wouldn't just go and be Ronin somewhere else and leave his kids to look after themselves. So he has to have lost them all for this to be the case.
Yeah, it's really interesting as well, because obviously we know that he's in Japan. We don't know why he's in Japan, but a lot of speculation has pointed towards the possibility of the Skrulls being involved as well. And in the trailer we see he's just stabbed what looks to be a member of the Yakuza.
You'd think so. It's the typical wearing a suit imagery that you get from films.
Why do we think he's just stabbed that fella? Is it a case of we're just not going to find out until the film, or is there any logical kind of route we can take with this, just from what we've seen so far?
I think the Skrulls is a good idea, especially if they are going to go down the secret invasion route. They need to really start setting that up in this movie to go into Phase 4. Whether that is the case, I don't know. It might depend on Captain Marvel. They're probably going to hold some things back, because they're holding a lot back with that film too. So, they're not going to give that away until the film, I think.
I have a theory.
Oh, go on. I also have a theory, but I'll let you theorize first.
Not all of them, but most of the characters in this trailer, there's a hint of them all coming full circle. So Iron Man's wearing his vest, which is not a very big full circle, admittedly, but it's there purposefully. Cap's gone back to wearing an outfit and being obsessed with the past. That's the Peggy thing. Thor's the only one that you can't really say anything about, because he's literally sitting on a bench, doing nothing. There's a little hint of it in Bruce being in turmoil, but again, that's not as big a deal. Nat is the one who's sent to get the rogue element to join the Avengers, like she was with the Hulk. She's going to do that for Ronin as well. And Hawkeye, when we first meet him, but in fact before we first meet him, he is a government agent, a killer for hire, basically. And he's gone back to that. I think that his response to losing his family is to just go back to what he knows and being an instrument of killing, basically. So I think he's working for the government or some other
rogue element.
Yes, and is killing Yakuzas on their behalf. I don't think it's the Skrull.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why he's become Ronin and gone with swords instead of his arrows, and I think this is the way they'll spin it, is he wants to see people die in close quarters because he's so broken. That's why he does it. Rather than shooting from a distance, you kill someone with a sword, it's much more personal.
Yeah.
That's what they're... the whole thing is.
Yeah, and that's one other thing we can kind of touch on as well, regardless of whether or not the Skrulls are actually involved, is Captain Marvel will influence this film in one way or another, the actual film, not just the character herself, but the events of that film. Could it be possible, because if you're familiar with the comics, you know that Thanos and the Skrulls are part of the same kind of alien species, they're called the Deviants. Do we think that we might see some experimentation with potentially, because not everyone's going to know that Thanos did this instantly. I think Nat, in that trailer, she's addressing like a press conference of sorts. But before that, do we potentially think that they might know of the Skrulls now, and that there might be some backlash to the Skrulls, and there might be a reason why Hawkeye's gone killing, because, you know, he doesn't have a target yet, and that might be an element as well. But one other thing about the Hawkeye thing as well is that it kind of clues us in potentially on how much time has passed, because it's not going to be an instant, you know, flick of the switch that his family die and then he just decides to...
Okay, I'm going to work.
John Wick himself, basically. We've heard all sorts of like times rest around like 4 years, like 6 months. Like it's very... And you raised before we came on here that this could potentially take place closer towards the beginning of the film with, you know, And
I think that this might be the failed attempt to get him, and then he comes back later on. I hope that there's a horrible bit in me that thinks that they'll try and get him as Ronin. He'll say no, and then he'll appear and he'll be wearing his traditional Hawkeye outfit, which would be like fan service a little bit. But I'm not that big.
For the 6 Hawkeye fans, myself included, who will appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, I'd pop for like a minute, but I just want to see Ronin against Thanos rather than Hawkeye against Thanos. Yeah. But I think it sets it up to be Hawkeye, probably.
Yeah, but with regards to the time jump, I don't really think we see any of that here. I think this is all the first act of the film in this trailer. And
I think Scott Lang is in the future.
I don't know.
Because he says, from a few years ago, he specifically says that. And I know Civil War, the timeline.
The timeline doesn't make any sense.
I know, the timeline between the end of Civil War and the start of Infinity War, it's not
great.
But it isn't a few years, is it?
No.
It's at least 2, so...
No, I'm sure it isn't because of Homecoming. I know trying to get into this timeline thing is just going to confuse everything.
Yeah, this comes from Scott Lang saying that it's been 2 years ago. Has it like been 2 years since we met in Civil War or something like that?
He says something. He doesn't say it in Civil War.
Yeah.
He's not
Well,
he's in a film.
Yeah, but he just say 2 years since we were at the airport. You remember me from such films as Captain America: Civil War and Ant-Man and the Wasp. There you go, Troy McClure, Ant-Man.
I'm pretty sure it is. He is in the future. I don't think there's a time jump of 5 years. I think it's a few years.
Oh, fair enough.
I don't know if it's 5.
Okay.
Cool.
But I definitely think that's the only. I'm sorry to go with a counter theory to your theory again.
Why do you hate me, Simon?
This is the matchup. Which side will you choose? Should we get to Thanos? Because we haven't actually talked about him much yet. We see him enjoying his exile. You know, one of the most infuriating moments of all time is him getting his happy ending in Infinity War. It's just... and he's still there enjoying it. You know, he's brushing his hands through his crops. He's put his armor on as a scarecrow, which is a nice callback to the Infinity Gauntlet comic as well. As for the main antagonist of Avengers Endgame, we've had lots of interesting talk come out in like the past few months about whether or not Thanos will fill that role, because let's face it, the only thing that Thanos can do in this feature is to reverse what he did in Infinity War. Obviously, we still expect him to do that in one way or another. But regarding another threat, how do we see Thanos potentially slotting into this? Are we going to see a team-up, potentially? Like there was in the comics. Obviously, not with Nebula being the main antagonist, but with something else from the information that we've gleaned so far.
At the moment, I don't think so. I think Thanos is still going to be the main villain. It'll just be not in quite an active as a way as it was in Infinity War, where that was his story and he was chasing the Infinity Stones. I think it'll be almost like a reversal of that, where he's just on his farm, he's happy, he's done his job, but then the heroes are the ones now trying to fix everything, going for the stones or going back through time, whatever it is. And then Thanos maybe has to try and stop them from doing that.
It'll be like the Deathly Hallows. So the whole point of the plans, the successful one and the unsuccessful one, is that Thanos can't know about them. So I think as an audience, we'll see that reflected in the fact that Thanos won't be in it until he realizes that something's going on. We might see him right at the start on his farm. That scene where he's walking through his very impressive crops.
Yeah, he's doing well for himself.
He's not a farmer.
Yeah.
He's doing well. I think that'll be all we see of him until he's like, oh, God. they're doing something.
They're reversing everything, yeah.
And then, which is the same as the Deathly Hallows, so you don't see anything of Voldemort until basically he's aware that Harry and Ron and Hermione are after him. Well, you see very little of him anyway.
Yeah. It's very, again, I'm really intrigued by his role in this, and I honestly wouldn't be able to name a single villain who I think could fill that potential other slot that we've heard about.
Galactus is the one, but you can't.
Yeah, you can't, not right now. Which brings us actually onto the, well, not so much absent, because we have Thor and Banner there, obviously. And Thor, he's not got Stormbreaker. He's in his civilian clothing. Is he in the Avengers compound kind of waiting there, or is he somewhere else?
Because I think he's in the Avengers compound.
Right, okay, so we think he's there.
I don't.
Oh,
I do. I just want to disagree with you.
Yeah, because I really want to talk about Thor, because they touch on it and they actually acknowledge it in Infinity War that out of all the Avengers, out of every single member of Earth's Mightiest Heroes, he has been the one who has had to deal with the most trauma. You know, his brother dies, his mother dies, his father dies, and then he's taken it on with a little bit of like, oh, you know, it's just
his planet was destroyed.
Yeah, his planet was destroyed, and he's taking it on the chin. This is the moment where the stack of kind of cards just like comes crumbling down, and I'm really fascinated about what Chris Hemsworth will bring that, because we've never seen a genuinely sullen and depressed Thor before. We've had it in the comics quite recently when he lost Mjolnir, but again, I'm finding that really fascinating. And out of all the Avengers you'd expect to be most up for the fight, it could be the possibility that Thor, in a complete twist of fate, is the most reluctant to take up his arm again, because he's living with the knowledge now that on top of all the people that he couldn't save, he had the opportunity to kill Thanos, and he missed it because he wasn't good enough. And what do you guys think of that? Is that?
I've literally just wrote an article about the characters in the trailer and said pretty much exactly that about Thor. I think his entire arc in this film will be him coming to terms with the fact that he came this close to killing him. And all of the other things will pile on top of that, and I think he's just going to be broken Thor for most of it. Maybe we'll see a little bit of him finding the rest of the Asgardians, because surely Valkyrie's going to appear at some point, which means that he'll have that subplot, but it might even be a Lord of the Rings Too Many Endings thing where they tag it on the end. But other than that, he got his chance to shine in the first film. I don't think he's going to have that much screen time at all, really.
That's fair enough.
They need to limit the most powerful characters, and they've done it with Hulk by having the identity crisis between Banner and Hulk, and now they've done it with Thor by making him broken so that he can't be a god. And that means that they have to use intellect, which is why the whole plan works, or will work in the end, rather than brawn.
I agree. I think what's going to be interesting is seeing how they balance Chris Hemsworth's performance, because Thor's greatest success in the MCU, from an audience point of view, has been
comedy,
has been banter Thor, and that's what kind of people want to see now from Ragnarok and Infinity War. That's what people really enjoy about that character, but that doesn't really fit with everything you said about his arc, which is very much set up of him being miserable and guilt-ridden. So how do they kind of balance that in?
You get Valkyrie or Korg to come in and go, and Thor's there like, I'm sad, and then Valkyrie or Korg go and go, is he though? And then go from there. I don't know.
I think we've got a hint that he's going to be emo Thor, because I've brought this up. He's wearing lots of eyeliner.
Oh yes, you did mention this.
Yes, I've mentioned it quite a lot, and to myself all morning. It's
a look.
It's pretty hot.
Yeah. No one's denying that.
So this is very much MCR Thor instead of MCU Thor. There's a reference to James.
You've been working on that so long.
Sure.
And that's the end of the eyeliner feed.
There we go.
I'm not okay.
We kind of Banner's arc and what he's going through as well. We've kind of already touched upon. It looks as though we know he's going to become the Hulk again. The Hulk's going to come back. So we'll kind of just move swiftly on from him.
It'll just be a matter of him balancing and becoming maybe Professor Hulk.
Yeah. One thing that I want to talk about is Shuri, because in the wake of Infinity War and the decimation, I still think the snapping is much better. But whatever.
It's a bit close to the fappening, though, isn't it? And nobody wants to talk about that.
Well, there we go. But yeah, we're talking about Shuri and all the people that kind of we don't know their fates. The fates weren't kind of concluded in Infinity War. The last we saw of Letitia Wright's character, she was on the helping Vision on the operating table.
She went out the window, didn't she?
And she went flying out the window. And in the wake of the film releasing, the Russo brothers did say that she would be back in Avengers 4, and obviously we have all the other Asgardians and whatnot. But in this trailer, we see that on top of Scott Lang and Peter Parker, she is also classed as a missing person. And one thing that the trailer doesn't touch on at all is the situation of Wakanda, because obviously T'Challa dies in Infinity War. That leaves the throne open to being assumed by, it could be M'Baku, it could be anyone else. You'd think that Shuri would be the next in line for the throne. Could it be the case that she's like maybe shirking her responsibilities? She isn't ready to assume that. Maybe she's searching for T'Challa as well, a solution to find what's happening, because it's interesting. We didn't, out of all the characters, we didn't expect Shuri to be one who would be absent, at least at first.
Yeah, I don't think that's real in the trailer. I think it's fake.
Oh, right.
So if Shuri was dead, we would know about it, because the first thing that everybody who's left in Wakanda is going to do is look for the heir, because she would be replaced. So she has to be dead for her to appear on that screen. She can't just be missing, I don't think. But the reason why I think it's fake is because Scott Lang gets his own face for the entire moment, whereas she has to share one with Peter Parker. I think that they've done that in order to bring up the question of Shuri being missing. I don't think it's going to be in the film, to be honest. I think
enough.
Shuri will appear.
I actually agree with that. I think if you go back to the Infinity War trailer and things that didn't make it into the movie,
put Hulk
or
in the
things that were put in there just for the trailer, just to try and trick us, to try and misdirect us, they're going to be doing that a lot with the marketing for this, because they don't want us to know what happens.
No.
And I think the Shuri one, it's so easy to do that because it's a split-second moment. There's nothing in context that would suggest whether it's true or not.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
For them to say that she is going to appear, and then for them to put in the trailer that it just seems so weird.
It's weird. It's erratic.
Yeah.
But we'll kind of talk about briefly, because we need to wrap this up soon. But what do we think the role of everyone else is going to be? Because obviously we mentioned Valkyrie earlier on, and the other Asgardians. We know that Korg and Meek have to come back at some point as well.
Let's hope so.
But for all intents and purposes, it looks as though the film's going to end with a massive bang of every character. Are we going to see them introduced gradually, or is this going to be a case of these characters entering the fray close towards the end?
I think that my timeline of the film, as I've said, is there's a failed attempt, and then there's a time jump. A failed plan, a time jump, and then Scott Lang appears. Everybody goes, actually, we could do this. Let's go and get the band back together. Blues Brothers style.
Love it.
And then they get the core team back together who've been on their own journeys. Cap and Nat probably been together the entire time. And then they're like, we probably don't have enough people to do this. And everyone will be like, I know a guy. Because that's happened in the past already. And then Valkyrie will appear with Thor. Maybe that's where his subplot comes in. He goes and finds them. And that's probably that.
Cool.
That's, simple as that.
Yeah, again, in the interest of time, we'll probably move on to Scott Lang, who is the kind of the main focal point.
Greatest character of all time.
Yeah, you both have 5 separate Paul Rudd murals in the office. It's actually quite endearing. How do we, because obviously at the end of Ant-Man and the Wasp, we find out that he's in the quantum realm, and then everyone else gets dusted while he's in. Obviously, he makes it out somehow, and we've kind of touched on how we think this is a time jump, or potentially might not be a time jump. Is Ant-Man the key?
Yes.
Yes.
Just
My heart.
Just go back to the time jump and what Simon was saying about that Scott Lang bit being in the future. It does actually make sense. Because obviously the way out of the quantum realm for him is probably through one of those time vortexes that Janet mentions. So that would fit with.
It's one of those lines that it has to come back. They can't just drop a line that big in a film and not for it not to come back.
Cool.
Yeah, and that would fit with his kind of, he's all happy and bantering, and everyone else is really sad because
he has no idea.
Yeah, it's been years, so he doesn't know.
Be a really good arc for Scott as well if he takes on board kind of everything that he's experienced in the Ant-Man films to really take a lead on the rescue effort as well, because it's gonna. I imagine you guys are gonna have to deal with Paul Rudd being sad in this movie, and I just want you to know now that I'm here for you.
We will
if it ever
console
comes
him.
to that.
Yes, it's fine.
But yeah, we'll wrap it up now. I think those were our theories on the Avengers 4 Endgame trailer. What we kind of gleaned from each individual thing. Obviously, there could be misdirections, so don't take everything that we've said as absolute fact. But as always, you can head over to whatculture.com for more theories, analysis, and breakdowns. You can like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. That would be lovely. As always, I have been Ewan.
I've been James.
I am Scott. No, I'm not. I'm Simon.
He's not Scott. He's Simon. And we'll all see you next
gone
time.
well.
There we go. Bye.
Bye.